Hey guys, I just wanted to do another quick video on fuel pump issues with a Raptor 700R. This is a buddy of mine's bike. Um, it's a 2007 Raptor 700R Special Edition. He bought it brand new in '07. He rode it for '07, '08, '09, 3 years, a handful of times, and moved from out west back home to the east coast here in Nova Scotia. And it's basically sat since around 2009. He fired it up once about 5 years ago to move it out of his garage, and he ripped around his yard a little bit on it, and it ran fine for him. He parked it. And then about 2 months ago, I gave him a call and said, "Do you want to go out to the camp riding?" And he said, "Sure." And he fired the bike up, it started, put it on his truck, brought it out to the camp, and then we went to go for a ride. He made it about, I don't know, 200 yards down the trail, and it died. Just fell flat on its face. Turned the key on, the fuel pump wasn't priming. So what I ended up doing was I got it back here and I got the fuel pump out of it. Now, this was about 2 months ago that I initially did all this. I tore the fuel pump all out of it, and it was bad, real bad. You can still see some remnants of how crusty and corroded and shit was from this thing sitting in a tank of decade-old fuel, never being used. Anyway, I tore it all apart, and I determined I could intermittently get the pump to run and prime. So I tore it all down. I cleaned everything completely. Here's the old sock. That's just an idea of what that was like. It was like dark brown before I cleaned it. I didn't have another sock at the time, so I cleaned it out the best I could. And the problem was all these wiring connections were completely rotted and corroded. I had to make new wires that go from the pump. Obviously, the new pump is in it now. I mean, I can't show it to you because I've got it all back in there with a new sock on it and everything like that. This is the old pump here, which was way rustier than that. I took a wire brush and scrubbed that off, and I got it to, I got it to work. I got it all back together. I made new wiring harnesses and got it to work. Everything seemed to be all right. Put it in. It primed up. The bike fired up, but it wouldn't take sharp bursts of throttle. It would sort of almost lose its idle completely and then come back on. And so I got on it and I took it for a ride. And after about 2 minutes of riding it, coming into the throttle quite a bit, it just died flat on its face again. So my initial thought was, where I cleaned the wires up and got the wires all fixed up and stuff on it the best I could, that it probably wasn't that. I figured it was this. I thought, okay, the pump itself, it's been sucking up all that shit gas. It's probably bad. So obviously, with all the rest of this being this way, it needed a whole new sending unit. But of course, what do you think a new sending unit costs for that? I called Atlantic Yamaha, or Rally Motoplex it's called now. They wanted Canadian upwards of $800, taxes and everything in, for a new fuel pump for this thing, the whole complete assembly. Now, of course, they don't sell just the pump. You got to buy the whole thing, which in this case, it really does need the whole thing, the way this is all corroded and these wires are all bad. But my buddy, I don't blame him. He doesn't want to spend $800 on a new fuel pump. So what I did was I ordered this pump here from China for $30. The pump and the new sock. It came together, both pieces, for $30. Put it in, got it all back together, back in the bike, and about 2 hours ago I went threw it on the truck and took it out to go for a ride. All I did was get it off my truck and let it idle while I put my helmet and my gloves on. By the time I had my gloves on, it died. And it would not prime again no matter what I did. I beat on the tank, turned the key off and on 50,000 times, nothing, no matter what I did. So I got it back here, I got it all back out again, and I determined that no matter what I do, inside these plugs are so corroded with shit that I can't get it to continuously make a connection. As the bike's idling and moving and vibrating, it's intermittently losing its connection. So I've run the wires up through the top, but instead of hooking them into this plug like I've done the last couple times, I'm going to run the wires outside of the sending unit, and I'm going to wire them directly into the wiring harness. I can bench test this pump right now by touching those two wires to that battery there, and every time I touch the wires, it primes. It turns on. So in theory, if my problem was in this connection, which when I was moving that connection, when it was hooked to the battery, I could intermittently get it to turn on. Well, now it does it every time when I touch the two wires coming off the pump. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut into the main harness here. These two outside wires, red and black, is power and ground for the pump. And blue and black on this is power and ground for the pump. Blue being power, black being ground. And technically, if I wire directly into that, it should work every time. But anyway, we'll see. So I just figured, you know, if anybody's having problems with these older Raptor 700s, fuel problems, or the pump's not priming and stuff like that, that this is basically what you're dealing with. It's probably going to be, if it's been sitting any amount of time, it's probably going to be like this thing was, all corroded and full of shit. And obviously, the tank hasn't been cleaned either, because when my buddy brought it to me, he told me another guy at work tried to get it running for him first, and he said they changed the gas in it, but they obviously didn't clean the tank, because I had this all cleaned out, 100% perfect, before I put it back together and put it back in. And just from it idling for the few minutes that it did before it died on me and wouldn't start again, this is how much shit got caught in this sump basket. So obviously I'm going to have to take this tank off too and completely wash it out and clean it, because they poured fresh gas in it, but it was still all full of shit and rust and everything else. So that's going to have to come out. But anyway, that's just an idea what you're dealing with. Technically, in a situation like this whole sending unit should be replaced as one unit. But for that kind of money, that's ridiculous. I mean, if we can buy a $30 pump, and if you're, highly doubt that part number is going to do you any good. But all you have to do is 07 to whatever year, 12, 14, Raptor 700R. Should work for you. You can also get a Walboro pump, which comes with a sock too, and that plug, that wiring plug, for like $140. But since we didn't even know if it was even the pump that's the problem, which it wasn't, the other thing is too is that getting that new plug's not going to help me out either, because as you can see, you got to get the plug up in between there. The only way to do it with an actual plug connector on the end of it is to take the top off this pump. But where these bolts are so rotten and seized on here, I'll just snap those trying to get the top off this thing. So the only way I can really do it is just feed bare wires through there and then try to connect back into the connector. So instead, like I said, I'm just going to take these wires and wire them directly into the wiring harness and see where we go from there. So maybe I'll do an update video on after I get it all back together, and then possibly maybe a review and ride of the bike later on. Alright, thanks guys.